You fail to understand, and the same incredible terror that's menacing me will strike at you!
Hey guys, welcome back. It's Mitch Brisker from the Blanket Fort. I'm going to be joined hopefully today by Rachel Hastings, my good friend and collaborator and colleague. Rachel's having a little bit of difficulty connecting, so we'll see what's happened. Oh, look, I have some notes here. Oh, look. Hey, listen, I want to thank you guys. Hey, Barbara. I'm glad you changed your handle to Barb Trust, but you can call me Barbara. Some of these handles get incredibly long. Hey, listen, I wanted to thank you guys right off the bat. Those of you who joined me with Sterling Tompkins yesterday to talk about my book, I really appreciate it. I got a lot of really great feedback. I'm really happy that you guys are reading it. Appreciate it. Hey, June, Temper June, hi, the inappropriate heifer, inappropriate as ever. The subject we're going to talk about today is kind of a difficult one. It's a bit of an uncomfortable one. It has to do with medical neglect in the Sea Org, how Scientology neglects its most steadfast, committed members. Now, I was never in the Sea Org, as some people love to point out. But I was witness to a lot of things, and because of my agreement to interact with them, I was owned in a way, the same way that Sea Org members were. I just didn't have the same kind of restrictions. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. Mostly I didn't have those kind of restrictions, but I'm really aware of the neglect, medical neglect of Sea Org members, and to some degree, all Scientologists, because let me just tell you one thing to get this sorted out, and we'll see what's happening with Rachel. She's furiously her camera is, she hasn't been on a whole lot, so she doesn't really have a dedicated setup, because Rachel is a working professional who's doing very well after having left a long career as a camera person in the Sea Org. And she definitely has a part of this that I wanted to tell. But so thanks to the 12 people who've showed up so far. I'll see what I can do on my own here while we're waiting for her. There is, you guys may have heard of a thing called the Creed of the Search of Scientology. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's really a roadmap of the level of hypocrisy in Scientology. But I wanted to, the final line after they've gone through this whole thing about, the creed of the Church of Scientology is this and is this and is this, the very last point says, and that the spirit alone may save or heal the body. Now think about that. The spirit alone, that means singularly. So what they're professing in that last line is, it's not saying it's the only thing that can, but it says may. It's a very passive way of saying, look, it's really the mind. Yeah, we're hoping, Miss Amber Sunshine. Yeah, Rachel should be here soon. She's having some connection issues. It's always the people with the top technologists that have the most. There she is. Okay, I'm going to bring her in. Hey, let's say hi to Rachel.
You can hear me. Hey.
There you are. I can hear you. You look great. Your hat looks great. Everything, your lighting looks great. I'm having focus issues. I switched to, this is, you guys listen, this is just between Rachel and I, okay? But you could just stand by for a second. I was shooting with a 1.8 50 millimeter lens, and I really like that lens a lot because it has a great, it has great flare, and it's just a nice quality. And I decided I wanted to go with a wider lens because I'm in here. So I went with a
cave.
20. Yeah, the cave.
Because you're in a cave.
No, yeah. I'm in a blanket fort under a bed. So you know what those are. You have kids. Come on.
We make forts all the time here.
Yeah, I'm in a fort. You get it.
Yeah.
So I switched to a 25 to 70, and I think the focus is drifting. Anyway,
really?
I'll have to. Yeah, it's weird. I've got to keep an eye on it. So
and it's the brand of your camera.
No, you're asking me what it is?
your lens isn't an off brand or something?
No. It's the best Nikkor. It's a 70, 24 to, it's a
Oh,
20.
the problem is you're trying to shoot movie stuff with Nikon.
Yeah. Okay. We're
It's
not
like
going to get, we're
stills
not going to have
only.
we're not going to have a brand war here. Okay.
I can't even help you because the focus goes the wrong direction.
Yeah, I know. I think that might be the problem because I noticed the ring, on the focus ring, the stops, it exceeds the stops. It should have physical stops, and it spins. Like when it's in the range of the focal scale, it moves, it focuses, but then it'll go past there. Probably because it does go the wrong way. Like I'm used to, cine lenses and that go the opposite way. That I
Mhm.
probably kept cranking it. So you're probably right.
Nik-
Okay.
Nikon's great for stills. It's just
Yeah,
they do
fashion.
weird things for
It's
video.
like, yeah, if you're what's his name, if you're like a famous fashion photographer, they're great. Anyway, I don't want to have this
Which I
argument
am
with
not.
you.
I am not.
Yeah,
a
I know
famous
you're not.
fashion photographer.
You're no Richard Avedon. We all know that. Okay, I think everybody is yeah, here you go. Hey, Apostate Alex, welcome to the show. He says, I blame
The
the
camera
camera operator.
operator. You
No,
need an AC. You could hire a first AC
yeah,
and assistant
yeah, like,
camera to
yeah.
keep you focused.
Yeah, keep me. Yeah, I mean, well, I always have trouble focusing. You know that. So I've explained to the folks while I was buying you time to come on, and I can tell you, I can't tell you how many messages I get. We miss Rachel. Okay.
Oh,
So yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not even kidding about that. They're like, "Oh, you again? Where's Rachel?" So
I miss doing this too. It's just it gets really busy. I actually have a color grading session going on downstairs right now on a film, and
oh,
I've
nice.
just like ditched them to come here.
Yeah. So yeah, you want to give us a little update about what you've been up to, or
Family
not?
stuff,
Yeah.
lots and lots of family stuff because it was
Uh
the holidays. And
huh. Right.
one thing I've said to the other people, because we're working on some different things with the other people who are uh, formerly of Scientology. I've said, don't let another one of your holidays be stolen from you. Like whatever you're
Yeah.
working on, it can wait. Pause, spend time with your family, just do
Yeah.
that, make the kids feel special, so lots of that, and then you came to we did a private screening of a feature film that I shot, and Mitch came,
I
and
did, and I
he
was going to
yeah,
mention that. It's a really good film. It's called Under the Influencer.
yes,
Hope,
and there is an older film with the same title, but this is a new one. You can't see it anywhere yet, but we, got it all finished and pushed through a whole, independent filmmaking saga of color and all this kind of stuff. And they finished it actually Christmas Eve, and we played it a few days after Christmas. So Mitch was there and a bunch of people, and now it's starting its festival run, and it's caught up in development with basically taking it to create a bunch of other films or TV series that
hmm
promote diversity and inclusivity in the hiring
hmm
process, both giving
yeah,
giving
yeah.
people voices and giving crew jobs that are more diverse and inclusive. And then this is a short film that we shot
Downstairs,
that that's
the color
downstairs.
session going on downstairs.
Yeah, so that is another short film we did that Michelle, my wife, produced it as part of her film school classes because she's in school as paid for by the Navy. I'm also finishing my degree because I never finished it because I got caught up in shooting for this cult you may have heard of.
Yeah.
So I never finished my degree. So I get some scholarship money from the Navy, also being a spouse of someone who has 100% service connected disability rating from the Navy. So that's helping me be able to finish that. But that's all online. So I kind of just throw that in on the side. So actually just started a film history class, um, which is pretty easy because, you know, we already nerd out about that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been shooting for some documentaries, you know. Mitch and I are talking
Well,
about doing some stuff,
yeah.
busy.
We're happy you're busy. We miss you, but we're happy. We're happy you're busy. So I explained. So anyway, two thumbs up on the film. We're all looking forward to everybody getting a chance to see it. It's a very clever film, very well put together. It's a real labor of love, you can tell, and cinematography is especially good. And I'm not just because
Oh,
I'm biased, but it is very good. It is very well shot, especially because I understand the kind of exigencies, the kind of pressure one is under when they're short on budget and short on crew, and they're the person that's responsible for creating the photographic image, which is ultimately going to be the film. So
yes.
hats off to you. Literally, I don't have a hat. I don't even have my silly,
You
my
need a
silly.
fancy director's hat.
I have one somewhere. Yeah, here it is. This is my fancy director's. This is my location hat. Okay, here we go. Okay, so
That's
that's
great.
it. Yeah, that's it. That's my fancy location hat.
When we talk about Russian cinema and the history of editing,
Yeah, yeah.
you
I'll
need to
put
wear
this
that
on.
hat.
Yeah. Well, film history is the Russian part of film history is pretty much about 90% of film history as far as I'm concerned. But
Yeah,
so
and we were just I just watched a thing about Leni Riefenstahl
ah,
and
my girl.
propaganda films,
Yeah.
which then goes into a whole thing that you've streamed about before,
Yeah,
which
I
was
have. And I'm sure I'll do more about that. There's an entire chapter of my book, which is it's not dedicated, but it's it is about Leni Riefenstahl and the
Loved by Hitler and Scientology.
yeah, and yeah, L. Ron Hubbard's girl, Leni
Hmm.
Riefenstahl. At some point, I'll take the letter that I have a copy of the letter which Hubbard wrote to the young man who was a British film editor who was asked Hubbard to if he would work on a script, rewriting a script for Leni Riefenstahl, having nothing to do with the Nazis. It was a theatrical film she'd made before the war, and he wrote back 2 pages gushing about the film and about Leni Riefenstahl. I mean, this is 15 years after Hitler did the single greatest act he ever did, which was to take himself out. And so the Nazis had barely begun to fade from memory. And Hubbard was like, "Yeah, Lenny, I love this film. This is great." It's really funny. I was reading through all that material the other day, and I came across a note where they're discussing waiting until the situation with the Nuremberg trials and Dr. Mengele blows over before they move forward with the film. It's just like to them, it
That's
was just a little
so like it's
situation.
just a little flap.
Yeah, like let's let the
In this
flap
week's
blow
flaps and
over.
handling, so we have
Yeah,
this little Dr.
yeah,
Mengele thing. We just need to do a little
yeah,
handling on that, let it blow over. And
yeah,
in this class, it was saying like Leni Riefenstahl tried to be like, "Oh, it was just a job for me. I didn't really know what it was about and whatever." But it's total BS because oh, hey, I'm out of focus now. There's actually evidence that she signed people like prisoners out of concentration
yeah.
camps to
It was,
work as
yeah,
crew on the films.
yeah. She made a film. The name of it escapes my mind. It was the first feature she made after working for the Nazis. Uh, but it was during the war. After she made her 2 big films, Triumph of the Will and Olympiad, she
Mhm.
made a film, and there was a concentration camp where there were interned Romani people. These people you may be more familiar with what is considered the pejorative term gypsy. We don't call them gypsies anymore. We call them Romani people. There was a camp full of Romani people, and every day she was shooting nearby the camp, and every day the SS would bring her extras from the camp. So there's no way she didn't know. Anyway, plus when she was asked to apologize, she said, "What do I have to apologize for? My films took the top awards." So anyway, she was a real piece of work. And then she lived to be like 103. Go figure.
Yeah,
It's
too evil to die.
yeah. What do they say? That only the good die young. Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah. So
yeah,
yeah. Well, it's. I think we found.
crazy. Well, that's a
We've.
different topic. And so
Yeah,
I
it
will tell
is.
you that my little the little power thing that allows me to run the camera off power, it's not working, so I have to be on battery on
Okay. So
my
how long? How long do
actual
we have?
I don't know. I could probably go close the back and it'll save power because I don't need to look at myself.
Oh yeah. The the LCD screen is just draining the heck out of your camera.
Yeah, but I don't need to. I don't need to see it. So we'll
Okay.
see. I mean, it's no big deal. I mean, I have other batteries here. It's just so lame to have to change batteries. But I bought the insertable thing, but it's cheap, and so it worked for
Yeah, I have one of those insertable things.
it worked for like. Do you now?
I
It worked
do.
for.
No, for my camera, I
No.
got one from Amazon, $35. Yeah.
Mine was like $20, so that's probably
Well,
the
that's
problem.
the problem. Yeah, right there. Okay, before we go on, Miss
What am I
Amberson's
having t-shirts say?
yeah, she has a question. I don't want her distracted when we get into the meat of this discussion.
My t-shirt, it's actually just a brand. My hat is cool though. It says "You are enough."
Yeah, good. We like that. We
Yeah,
like that. So yeah,
I like
yeah.
people to know.
For those of
They're
you who are
enough.
listening in your cars, the question was, "Hello, Rachel. I'm distracted easily. What does your hat and T-shirt say?" So that we just got an answer to that. Okay, good. So we're gonna jump into today's topic, which has to do with medical neglect. I filled them in a little bit. Let me fill you in on what I filled them in on, so we can be completely filled in. One of the most important thing I mentioned was the fact that in the creed of the church, the final line says, "And that the Spirit alone may save or heal the body," which really sounds more like Christian Science than it sounds like Scientology.
It does, and the parallels of that are interesting. And I was raised in Christian Science, so and went to Christian Science school and Christian Science summer camp and all that kind of stuff. Very in it. So I was excited when I found Scientology. One, I had been raised to believe that if someone criticizes a religion, it probably just means they don't understand it, and to be very accepting. Um, and then so it was like give people the benefit of the doubt and let them explain things. And then I was excited about Scientology because I could go to a doctor. So when I started being very very young and living on my own for the first time, I didn't like the fact that I had been not allowed to go to a doctor. I thought this doesn't make sense. I don't agree with this. So when I started with Scientology, I was like, this is great. It's very spiritual and kind of metaphysical, and I like all that stuff. I like that, Eastern religions and the philosophy aspect of it, and the quantum physics aspect of things. But I can go to a doctor. This is great because they're like, yes, absolutely, you can go to a doctor. So I know it sounds dumb, but for me, I was like, this is awesome. So I was like, I got my first physical when I was like 19. Like I'd never had one before. I'd never had anything like that. Like I'd been to a dentist, but that was it. So I thought this was really cool. And then I ended up, in this job where I thought I was just, flying around the world filming documentaries and stuff. And I was in this Oregon. I was so new to Scientology, I didn't even actually know what it was. I didn't understand at all. It was definitely packaged and sold in a way that was a little bit different, a lot different. And
Right.
then there started being
Glamorous job.
yeah. And then there started being these restrictions on my medical care. And then things got worse and worse and worse. So then I was like, you guys are just like Christian Science. And they're like, no, we're not. We're not. But I was like, hey, I can't get my medical care paid for. I was just in, Nepal for 6 weeks and I'm very, very ill. And my crew is very, very ill. We're sick. Like we could have something serious. We need to get this. And I ended up having to spend, over $10,000 on my own, paying for my own medical care and my own medical bills.
What, as a Sea Org member, you had to spend that?
Yes.
Oh my God.
I had an inheritance from my mother, and it was spent almost entirely on food because the food wasn't good enough, and I was getting sick from the food, and on actual medical bills and paying for my own medical care that I couldn't get. I couldn't get covered.
Wow. And what country were you in during that?
I got sick I got sick in many countries. I got very sick in Nepal. I got very sick in Sierra Leone, and I got sick in a bunch of South America. I got food poisoning over 20 times.
Oh my God. Wow, since you, I
Yeah,
get, but those stats you didn't turn in, so they didn't let you
I would have
to
been
keep.
upset.
Yeah, they didn't let you keep a stat of number of days without puking my guts up from some bug. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, but yeah, it's great to yeah, it's. I'm glad you can make light of it, but I had my own experiences, which is strange because I wasn't in the Sea Org. But the thing that and people may be aware of this, but they have a particular position. Within Sea Org bases, there is the qualifications division, which is normally reserved for looking after the quality of the technology, blah blah blah. It's like if they think you're not doing it right, that's kind of where they pull you in there and they make you restudy things and stuff like that. Uh, but they also have this medical office called the medical liaison office. And generally, the person that they assign to that is called a medical liaison officer or MLO. And that person their job is to coordinate all of the health care for all of the staff. Stop me, Rachel, if I've got this wrong. But
No, that's correct. You're correct.
or if there's something to add. So all medical care has to be coordinated. So if you're feeling sick, you have to report to Qual, to the qualifications division. If somebody notices you're sick, they're going to report you and you will be ordered to go up there. That's how your journey to getting some medical help begins. And then the medical liaison officer will evaluate the importance of whatever care you need. And if you do need care, they got to figure out how to get the money because they don't have medical insurance. They just have like like a fund of cash that's supposed to be for medical care. And then they sort of
Not
need
much cash, too.
they need to evaluate your care against maybe other people's care. So then they do a kind of a triage, right? Well, you have 103 temperature, but this other guy's puking blood. So he's going to go to the doctor. You're going to go to bed. There's a kind of a triage involved in it. And simultaneously, there is a person called the case supervisor. And that's the person in all of Scientology, whether you are a public person or you're a staff member or you're in the Sea Org, that's the person who is going to basically determine what steps you're going to take in Scientology. And that person is also going to determine if you have completed those steps. So everything, the final sort of your ultimate caretaker in Scientology is a person you will never lay eyes on. Because that person is well, maybe they'll do a video and talk to people, whatever, but you'll never have a relationship with them, a direct relationship. And yet they will be the final arbiter on your spiritual care and your physical care. Like, boy, if you're going to go to the doctor, minimally, the situation needs to be written up and it has to go to the CS. And if you need medication, they're going to have to approve it. So you've got this kind of medical liaison office, and you have this other office of the case supervisor adjudicating all the medical care for Sea Org members and also weighing in, we'll talk about that later, weighing in and influencing the medical care of public Scientologists.
Yes, because you have to go, even if you are a public parishioner, especially if you're going to a place that has a base like flag, you have to get approval from the medical liaison officer and security and all these different, there's this whole form they call a routing form you have to go through before you can set foot in their
Right.
hotels or in their classroom, their course rooms, which are classrooms, or their restaurants, anything, right? Before you can
Yeah.
you can you route into an
Yeah.
organization. So you have to
Yeah.
be MLO approved. So these MLOs have a lot of power, and the major thing I was running into is they are not. You would think you would need to be a doctor or a nurse or trained medical professional of some sort. No, the case supervisors are not nurses. If you have an
It's not a
MLO, if you have
requirement.
not a requirement, and never is the case. I think maybe there'll be like an MLO who was a nurse years ago 20
Yeah,
years
but
ago, they were a
yeah,
nurse
like
before
at
they
Gold, they have a woman who was had been a professional nurse, but her
30 years
certification,
ago.
yeah, it disappeared like at least 30 years ago.
Right.
So
They don't stay up on all of this stuff. Like
right,
I believe to become like a foster resource parent, you have to have more medical training than to be a medical liaison
I
officer.
think to be a
And
bus driver, you need more medical training.
yeah. No, I
Yeah,
like I
because
don't
you,
even know if they're CPR I don't CPR
yeah,
trained, like like I'm
yeah,
first
I
aid and
know,
CPR trained. They're not even like it's I mean, I think some of them could elect and take it upon themselves to learn CPR or something, but they are not they are not trained. Most of them do not even have a college degree. Some of them may not even have a high school diploma, right?
right,
If you're gonna, and I don't, I don't care if college. Some people are just don't want to go. They want to go to vocational school, right on, right? But
yeah,
the problem is if you're going to be in a medical field and you're going to make medical decisions, and you are the gatekeeper to medical care for people, which can be life
yeah,
and death,
yeah,
you should have medical
yeah,
training and you should
yeah,
abide by HIPAA, and they do not.
yeah.
They
No,
you are
absolutely not.
absolutely forced and coerced to sign documentation so that they do not have to follow by HIPAA. That
Yeah,
MLO, they will tell your boss that you work for what's going on with you medically. They will tell the ethics section, the ethics officer,
oh yeah,
or the MAA, the Master at Arms, which is their ethics officer in a sea organization base. They will tell the executive director or commanding officer of the organization that you work for. They can write something up confidential and totally violating HIPAA, and they do as a regular procedure, and send it to all these people. They can send it to 10 different people.
yeah. So yeah, so Casey had brought up this question: does the MLO have medical training? I'm guessing no. I just wanted to let
No,
everybody know that we answered that question. Uh, but thank you for that, Casey. Yeah. So
it's
then let's.
insane, and
Yeah,
you
it
are not
is
allowed to go to the doctor without
alone.
them
Yeah, yeah,
approving it. Like, you have to understand that they are
yeah,
gatekeepers. Like, I was sitting there saying,
yeah.
I something's wrong. I need to go to a hospital. Like, I'm losing heartbeats and fainting, and I need to go to a doctor. Like, falling on the floor, like, I think I'm having a heart attack, and they would decide whether that was valid or not.
Right, right.
Whether
Whether it
you
was mental
get,
or physical.
and because they
Yeah,
went to a no ins yeah, and of course, always, right? Like, you physically cut or you have a physical injury, they where do they want, and they go with you. They usually will not don't want you to go on your own. I was like a rebel, so I would just go on my own. Um,
right, right.
I went and took for after the Nepal thing, I went and checked myself and my junior and the girl who worked for me who was also very ill. We just went to the emergency room at a
Yeah,
hospital
because
with no
a lot of
approval.
people get hepatitis in Nepal. It's a
You
very
can
common
get
thing.
there's a litany of really
Yeah,
bad things you can get, and I
yeah,
was being
yeah,
told, "Get on the next plane back to Nepal," because the guy that's there still
yeah. Of
filming is not
course.
doing a good job. And I was saying, "Hey," to to my boss at Gold, "Hey, we're very ill. Like, we're sick. I can't eat. I can't eat food. She can't eat.
Yeah,
We can't hold down any food.
yeah,
We shouldn't fly back. We shouldn't go fly for the next 19 hours back to Kathmandu right
yeah.
now. We
Exactly,
need to get."
exactly. Well, here's a fun fact. A good percentage of people who head to Nepal for the purpose of beginning their journey to climb Mount Everest never make it out of Nepal because they get so sick. So that is
Yep.
considered like if you're going to go hike Mount Everest, it is considered the first real challenge that you're going to face is getting out of Nepal without getting sick and being healthy enough to actually climb the mountain. They actually want you to stay there. Well, actually, you then go from Nepal up to Kathmandu, and then you spend 6 weeks there, making sure that you're not going to die of hepatitis and that you can breathe the air. Then you get to climb Mount Everest. But anyway,
The
sorry,
Everest
that's a
Base Camp.
little.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a
No, it's really common. And the thing is, it was based on work. I wasn't like on vacation. Oh, now it's
yeah,
on me. It
exactly,
was it was
exactly.
caused by being on assignment, but there was no care. I mean, like, when I was sick and I was there, um there was nobody answering up to my health and the health of
Right.
the two crew that were with me that were also very ill. I was like, they would just let us die here. We'd just be some little headline
Yeah, exactly.
in
Yeah,
some small newspaper.
yeah, and when Rachel, when you mentioned about you couldn't go alone to the MLO, I mean to your exam, to your physical, and that somebody from the MLOs would come along. I mean, the invasion of privacy is absolutely incredible. There's no privacy whatsoever in the Sea Org. And to some degree, all privacy is violated. It's just being a Scientologist, you have your privacy violated constantly. I have a friend who's like a grown ass man, and he's not even in the Sea Org, but he worked at Gold, and so they were really trying to get really intrusive with the pros who worked at Gold. And I mean, this guy, he agreed. He didn't have to, but he agreed to have somebody from the MLO's office go with him to a physical, and like he's in there getting a prostate exam and all this stuff. And there's some like female from the MLO's office just standing there pretending to be an interested party in the whole thing, and they're not even medically trained. So yeah, it gets really invasive. I mean, I for the most part just refused to share any medical information with them because I said, I'm not going to. It's illegal. You have no right to know this. So I kind of got away with a lot until I didn't. But that's a whole other story. But now let's talk about some of the actual negative things that happen other than having some, woman from the MLO's office stand there while a doctor puts their finger up your butt. So, but beyond that, there's some pretty gnarly things that go on. Rachel?
Yeah.
Well, for instance,
Oh, you want
had
mine? I
told
thought I was telling too many stories.
no, you're doing great. I love your stories. Like you broke the news about the forced IUDs, and that's a pretty intense piece
Yes.
of medical malpractice.
Yeah. So there, if it's not necessarily practiced at every level, but again, as you know, if you have anything to do with working on the lines of or for in any capacity Dave Miscavige, then they are scared to death that you're going to, get pregnant. um, so they got in a lot of public relations trouble. See, when you cause a fuss about things, they'll stop doing it, not out of the goodness of their heart or actual genuine change, but because they don't want what they call bad
Right.
PR. Um, they don't want
Yeah.
the PR flap, as they'll call it,
Yeah.
right? So the
Yeah.
forcing people to get abortions became very bad for their PR. And there's I believe there's still pending lawsuits on this subject right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they
They don't
will
like
still
scrutiny. It's the scrutiny because the flap brings scrutiny, and they need to shut that scrutiny off. They don't care about what's causing it.
right. Exactly. So, but they won't allow anyone to stay in this organization if they have children and they say, oh well, you can choose to have a child and leave, and there's no harm in that, and that's a lie. People who do choose to remain pregnant and resist the pressure to have an abortion and say, hey, I'm going to go have these children. It's like wearing the scarlet letter. They're branded
That's
XSO,
horrible.
and there's policies
Yeah. I
from
mean,
Laura and
yeah.
Hubbard
And
that you're a
yeah.
degraded being. You're a DB. You're a degraded
Yeah.
being. You can never not be one. You're a degraded being till the end of time. They'll still take your money and kiss your ass if you're
Oh,
going to give
yeah.
them money for services as a public. They'll still
Well, if
take
you
your
do
money
give
and
them
smile to
enough,
your face,
Rachel, if
but
you give
behind
them
your
enough
back, the
money,
way they talk.
yeah. But if you do give them enough money, they'll stop
Oh
calling you
yeah,
a
but
degraded
what?
being. It's a lot of money, but
Yeah, but even these I've even seen top donors who've got given quite a lot of money still be talked to like, well, there's still an XSODB because if they give
yeah,
one
yeah,
little, oh, I
yeah,
if they give one XSODB, yay, thumbs up. If you
yeah,
if they do one little thing that's like different or wrong, or they
yeah,
poke the bear,
yeah,
they criticize something, whatever, you could have given over $1 million and still get called that and still get talked about that way and still not be trusted behind your back. It's phenomenal, right? So,
yeah.
um, it's currently they don't force you openly to have an abortion if you get pregnant. But I do know it did not happen to me because I never got pregnant, but other people that I know, it did happen to them. And the language is, are you going to do the right thing and do something about it? We
Yeah.
cannot tell
Yeah.
you to get an abortion, but are you going to do the right thing? And now sit here in this room. You are isolated. That the person is isolated, taken off of their position. Everyone knows something's wrong. They're often separated from their spouse, and they're automatically in very lower conditions, which means um, they're put on physical manual work, which they call messed work, which is physical manual labor, and minimally will get a security check, an interrogation. All of these things are going on, right? All to push you into the decision to have an abortion. So they were like, well, this is
Right.
kind of messy and unworkable. And then you have to make the person stop working for this extended period of time. So how about instead of that, we'll force IUDs? And I don't know whose idea. It might have been Chandra's idea. Chandra was the one who was like, "You must. This is a requirement. You will. You
Wow.
you are required to get an IUD." And I know that like Melissa, if you remember Mel,
Hmm.
she was complaining about these things. There's a bunch of different girls that were there. I don't want to go into exactly what happened to them because that's their own medical stuff, but they were speaking up about it and saying, "Hey, I'm not okay with this." But this was all of the women, and I know that there was a guy at Flag who had gotten a previous wife pregnant, and he was told he was not allowed to get married until he got a vasectomy.
Nice. Yeah. Great.
They wouldn't approve his CSW. Um,
Wow.
So it's just the fact that you could for work require someone to undergo an invasive medical procedure. Um, it's it's I don't know how this is legal, but it is a problem in our country that we allow religions this much power and this much freedom. It is a problem,
Yeah. No,
and
it certainly
every
is.
ounce of uh, taking advantage of that this group can, they will.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that these kinds of freedoms that can be that can be
Yeah.
exploited and taken advantage of. These kind of freedoms are what you have. They're part of a free democratic society. I mean, one of the downsides of having a free democratic society is that you create these freedoms and then people get there and they exploit them. But that doesn't mean we can't then go in and correct, not necessarily close those holes, but we can create laws, and the means of recognizing these kinds of abuses easier, so and shut them down. But because if you look, Hungary, they're arresting Scientologists. That I mean, where are they putting Scientologists in jail? In the two most fascistic countries in the world, in Russia and Hungary. But it's because in those countries they don't have these kinds of religious freedoms. So we have to learn in this country, how do we strike a balance? In other words, how do we maintain our religious freedoms and our freedoms to protect our privacy, while at the same time stopping these criminals like the Church of Scientology that uses those freedoms, that takes advantage of the protections that those freedoms bring. So it's a tough situation, but it's angry citizens and disgruntled apostates like us that I think makes the big difference. So there you have it.
It
You have
does, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that happens. But now there's also, I mean, here's the thing. Here's what happened to me. Okay, I had this position, and so I was
Yes.
relatively important in this organization. But I was hired to be there. Some people have, I've gotten feedback from people that say things like, "Yeah, but you were hired to be there. I mean, you agreed to be there." Blah blah blah. But the thing is, we were all tricked. We were all lied to, right? Like. Okay, Rachel signed a $1 billion contract, and I said, "Here, give me some
Yeah.
golden handcuffs." But the fact of the matter is, we're all trapped in this thing, right? So and less
Yeah.
and more tragically for the kids that were born into it, because even though I joined at a point where I was so vulnerable that I was really no different than a child being born in. And Rachel was tricked in terms of how Scientology was packaged for her as a young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed filmmaker who was like, what? Travel the world and make documentaries at my age? I mean, wow, what a great opportunity. But the fact is that, you know, in my position, I was pressured so much. When I don't know really how to tell the story because it's very uncomfortable for me. It's very private, but I'm going to stand on my HIPAA rights here, not and just refuse to talk. But I've already invited you into the story, so I can't do that. But I was not doing well. I was suffering. I was beginning to suffer what they refer to as suicidal ideation. I guess, can we say that word? I mean, it's a mental health issue, and I think it should be talked about. It has a lot of stigma, but this was happening to me, unbeknownst to me, a lot because of the pressure that I was under from Scientology. One of the things about being in any abusive relationship is you may not recognize the true source of the abuse. It may be somewhat hidden from you. You may actually keep turning to your abuser for help. This is a really typical thing. You know, the National Abuse Hotline, they keep statistics. And according to their statistics, individuals will make 7 attempts to leave an abusive relationship before they can. And I'm sure there's some statistic having to do with cults as well. That it takes, and some of these attempts might just be attempts in your mind. So I was now, the organization became very concerned because they really needed me to be well and engaged and working and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, whether I was doing it, you know, being paid a lot or not, it doesn't really matter. I was engaged at this very extreme level of interaction. And so then I came under the radar of the medical liaison office because it's like, well, Mitch is not doing well. We need to I wasn't sleeping, for one thing, which is, you know, sleep is one of the, you know, it's one of the tent poles of mental health, right? So, you know, it's really going to affect you. So I'm not sleeping. And so, the MLO's office is basically under orders, get this guy sleeping. Well, it turns out that L. Ron Hubbard on the ship, somebody had just gone completely what we call type 3, right? Which type 3 is what does that stand for? Rachel, do you remember? It's type 3 psychotic.
It's a psychotic break, basically.
Yeah, it's a type of
Someone
psychotic break. Yeah,
but you mean the like real world definition?
Yeah, like what would we call it? Like colloquial, we would just say, yeah, I mean, psychotic break, I guess.
A psychotic break, or, you know,
lost his shit. He lost their shit.
Yeah. Someone gets triggered and they have a break, they have a serious event.
Yeah, so there was I read about this. There was a SERG member who had a psychotic break and wasn't sleeping, and Hubbard said it's okay to give them a soporific. Soporific is another word for a sleeping pill. So based on that one thing, they said, okay, we're going to give sleeping pills. They started giving me, what did they give me? Benzodiazepines. Okay, that's a psych drug. Okay, so you got to understand, I'm like, drugs
it's addictive, and they're
really addictive. Yeah.
The hypocrisy of this, because here at the same time they're telling me and everyone else, you can't take an Advil, you can't take a Tylenol,
and they're giving me
if you're in pain, or and they're
giving,
saying all drugs are bad.
Yeah.
They have an AntiDrug booklet that they're out there preaching about how bad benzos are. You know,
they're paying me to do ads pushing against the pharmaceutical industry that makes these drugs, because they make these drugs, and then they're using the drugs to help me sleep so that I can get auditing, right? Because they actually believe that that's what I need. But so anyway, so it wasn't just benzodiazepines. Oh, it was, and I think the benzodiazepine they were giving me it was Xanax. It was either Xanax or the one that starts with an A. I forgot.
Well, also like rallying against the company that manufactures it to try to get them shut down, and
it's ridiculous.
Holding marches and protests against them.
Yeah,
and
I hadn't taken drugs in 30 years. I was really proud of that, and then all of a sudden, I mean, I got given more drugs at Golden Era Productions than I had ever. I'm saying like off-label, pharmaceutical drugs, not for any actual thing that I ever had wrong with me, than I had since in 30, 40
And
years.
were they getting them prescribed through,
Yeah, here's how
like,
they
in
would
a
do it. Oh
proper
yeah,
way?
yeah. Here's how they would do it, and this is completely medical malpractice. They had a couple of doctors. One of them passed away. You probably knew her.
Shields?
And they,
Ma
yeah, Megan Shields. Yeah, she absolutely, if she was still alive, I would report her to the AMA and get her license pulled, because she was a go-to doctor for Golden Era Productions. And she would prescribe just on the phone. The MLO would call up and they'd have this little discussion. And so here's the deal. I didn't know it at the time, but I had sleep apnea. I was later diagnosed with sleep apnea, which was a problem. And it's completely trauma-based. I'm not obese. I have none of the vectors for sleep apnea. After the Gulf War, they had tons of these young, fit soldiers come back. And these guys all had sleep apnea because it's this thing is caused by trauma. That's one of the vectors
Yeah.
for sleep apnea. And so the thing that you have to do, you have to ask people how they sleep before you give them sleeping pills, because a lot of people who don't sleep well have sleep apnea. And if you give somebody with sleep apnea a sleeping pill, you could kill them, because the sleep apnea is waking them up because they're not breathing. But if their essential nervous system slips below a certain level of suppression, they're not going to wake up. They're going to have a heart attack and they're going to die. So they were giving me all of these sleep medications.
They'll knowingly, they just needed you to work, right? If you can work for them, the MLO's job is to do whatever it takes to get you back working.
Oh, absolutely. Back to work.
And if that kills you, if that risks killing you in the process, that's fine. That's an acceptable risk.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Yes, Leslie
but
Bishop.
yeah, so you were not being properly seen. You weren't going in and having.
No, they called her up. No, Rachel, they called up Megan. They called up Dr. Shields. They said, we need to get Mitch. I knew her, right? Because I also had seen her privately as a physician, and she saw my kids. Because, we trust these doctors. They're Scientologists. We figure they must be okay. And they said, yeah, well, Mitch is, I guess because she'd seen me at some point in the past, that made it okay. She said, well,
that's
we got to get
ridiculous.
him. Yeah, of course, because doctors aren't supposed to prescribe stuff like that without seeing the patient.
And they were drugging the heck out of Danny Sherman as well.
Yeah, I don't know where Danny was getting it.
He was a full-blown drug addict running around Gold and SMP,
and it was
carrying a
waving a gun
weapon,
in people's faces. Yeah,
carrying a concealed
not always
weapon
concealed.
as an addict.
Yeah.
Well, the concealed part, when it was concealed, is highly illegal, right? Like, you can't just be showing up to work in California with a concealed weapon and knowing that he's high on drugs. I mean, knowing that he's completely high, and he's writing speeches for the Truth About Drugs campaign.
Oh yeah, and he's writing 3.5 hour. He was the guy writing the IS events and writing all
this. Truth About Drugs, AntiDrug. We're and writing all the scripts for these stories about cleaning up the streets and getting people off.
And I
high
never
as a kite. As a kite.
And if you went into Danny's office, which I did often because we were friends and we would just chat until we weren't friends, he always had a 38 in the drawer of his office, and he had a couple of switchblades on the desk because he loved collecting illegal knives. You can't have retractable knives in California with a blade longer. I think it's 4 inches. And he loved collecting these beautiful, like, Italian
illegal knives.
Yeah, illegal knives.
So he's high, running around with all these staff. I was there. I didn't know that he had a weapon. I didn't know that he had knives. I didn't know that he was high. I thought he was weird.
Yeah.
Well, listen, and then the SMP MLO for a while was the one who it was. Oh, I got balloons.
Yeah, she deserved balloons. Yeah, I turned mine off. I figured out how to turn it off.
I kind of like it. Did this do it? What does it? Bunny
Hey,
ears?
do the rock on? Do the rock on? Yeah. Okay, do rock on. Do 2 of the horns. These things. Do 2 of those. This is really good. Check this out.
Everybody was on drugs. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, so I like it.
Little kung fu fighting. Yeah, go on. So but
she had formerly been his caregiver, so she knows he's high on drugs, and then she's the one overseeing and gatekeeping all of the medical care that all of the S&P staff are allowed to get and who they're
Right.
going to spend money
Right.
on,
Right.
which is like, and there's also like this thing where it's like, well, you're just a cleaner who we've sent over from Russia because
Yeah.
they'll do this wild thing where they'll get visas for people and make them from other countries and make them cleaners. They could be there's
Yeah.
a bunch of people they've brought over from Russia and gotten them visas and stuck them in there as
Yeah,
cleaners,
but
and they don't
that's
help
not
them learn
trafficking,
English.
right? That's not
No, not at
trafficking.
all,
No,
right?
no.
They're religious visas. Like they're
Yeah,
religious
yeah,
workers, and they're like scrubbing every
yeah.
square inch of everything, like with totally ridiculous hours, right? So they're not important enough because, like, if you're like, oh, I'm going to go, you know, work, filming, COB or photographing COB, or I'm, directing something, whatever. You're higher important, so you're going to get medical care, and she's not going to get medical care,
Yeah,
and
or you're yeah,
it's
it's crazy.
very
Or you're Dan
evil.
Sherman. You're Dan Sherman who makes them so much money because he writes all these events and they make tons of money. And he's not in the Sea Org, but he gets to jump the line when because he refuses to quit smoking and one of his lungs collapses, they jump him in line at the Mayo Clinic and get his lung removed. Spent God knows how much money when there's Sea Org
There's a
members that actually
there's
need.
a staff member that needs a checkout because they're going to get cancer, and that's why
Yeah,
so many of them
exactly,
just
exactly.
die.
Yeah, it's really pathetic. Or me. So like what happened with me on this whole, I'm starting to like lose my shit, and they're becoming very concerned, and so they decide I need an MRI, and I'm like, well, I don't need an MRI. Why do I need an MRI? Well, because the difficulties you're having may be a symptom of a brain tumor, and I said that's crazy. So I went to see my doctor, and he said, well, we're not going to prescribe an MRI because you have no symptoms, right? It's like, why would we do that? They don't just prescribe things because people walk in and complain. They want to see some symptoms. So they didn't prescribe the MRI. So then they agreed to pay for it. Like, this is expensive stuff, right? So why are they paying for my MRI that I don't need when they have staff members who are waiting in line for medical care? So so the MLO says, well, let's go see your doctor again, and see if I can talk him into it. And the MLO scared my doctor, one of the doctors at Kaiser, not my doctor, but like I had like a brain specialist, into writing a script for an MRI. I think the woman was worried about being sued for malpractice because let me just add this one little detail. Hubbard had written this policy letter called Physically Ill PCs and Pre-OTs. And in this policy, he said, if somebody's not advancing in Scientology, you need to check and see if there's an underlying medical condition, and you need to rule that out. So then they use the phrase rule that out to justify doing anything, like we're going to test for this and test for this and test for this, and it's all very expensive, and it's done when the money should be spent elsewhere. But they need to rule these things out. So she sat there, the MLO, and explained to an actual doctor, we need to rule it out. And she told her this story about this person. And none of the doctors would agree, and none of them would do it. And then finally we got someone to do it, and they found out that they had like a nascent brain tumor, and the person wouldn't have died if they didn't do it. She literally scared the crap out of this doctor, and she signed the script, right? So, but the real punchline of the story is I started mentioning to other Gold staff that I worked with, yeah, I'm going to go have the MLO said I should have an MRI. And the person says, oh, I had one. And then another person says, oh, I had one. And then another person says, oh, I had one. Based on the number of people I spoke with, I would estimate that half the staff at Gold had MRIs. An expensive, unneeded medical procedure because of the stupid Hubbard policy letter that you have to rule things out. So,
And then just get some random thing. Like for a whole period of time, everybody was being sent to this this guy who was like Scientology Chinese medicine doctor, right? I'm fine if you want to go, pursue that if that's where the direction you want to go, right? But it was like, don't go to a medical doctor. You have to go see this guy who's going to give you these packets of really gnarly cold tea, intense herbal tea that's like wormwood and all this stuff, right?
yeah.
So it's in whether that works or doesn't work, isn't the point. The thing is that you did not have a choice, right? It was like, well, you have to go see this guy, and he's a Scientologist. So there's this wild thing where the MLOs are paying a Scientologist money. There was another doctor, and she was moving up in her IAS status every year because she would do IV drips, right? So they're like, so at one point I was like, hey, I have all this stuff going on. I need to go like see a doctor. I have all this medical stuff going on. All of which is gone now, by the way, mostly from sleeping and then
Yeah,
like
me too. As soon as you disconnect from those guys, your health comes
mental health
back.
and healthcare,
Yeah.
like things like, breath
Sorry.
work and like all this kind of stuff, like that your mental state does affect you physiologically. And there are plenty of studies that you will have your like medical doctor talk to you about that, right? To a certain degree, right? But they're like, no, we're not going to send you to a doctor, and no, you can't get a mammogram. I was told, do not get a mammogram. And I was like, I think I should get, I want to get a mammogram. No, you cannot get a mammogram, but we're going to go give $5,000 to this Scientologist who's a doctor. And you're going to go and get vitamin IV drips, 3 times a week for a few weeks. And then she makes all this money, and it's like some loop where she kicks a bunch of it back for her IAS
Oh
status.
yeah,
And
they
she gets a
donate
big
back. Yeah,
trophy.
there's a doctor in Orange County who has a
It's
clinic, and they must have 10 chairs in there, and all they do is cycle Scientologists through there on these vitamin drip routines because the CSs or whoever the MLOs are saying that they need that therapy, and then those guys are donating back to the IS. And
Yeah, it's wild. But then when I wanted to go do regular medical things, it was denied, 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 denied,
right,
denied all the time. And
right,
not just me, everybody around me. And they let workman's comp slip
right,
at S&P. So there was a person that desperately needed a knee surgery and couldn't get it for over 2 years, and they let workman's comp slip, which they're supposed to have it. It had slipped. Naomi, who told me, because I was like, let's just do this through workman's comp, right? And she's like, oh, we messed up and we didn't pay it, and we don't have workers comp, right? So I was like, okay, whoops, right? So, and that's like all like the renovations were going on there, like seriously physically dangerous stuff where
right.
multiple people were injured, right? So, yeah, just not a good condition. And then what they used to do, so like Mike Brown was speaking to the fact that he was like, oh yeah, they just put everybody on Medi-Cal, and because of their low income. And that
Right,
isn't a thing anymore. So that
right,
switched, where basically that was actually in the beginning, they would sign everybody up, let's say 15 years ago, for Medi-Cal. So everybody in would be low income because they're SERG members, right? So they would qualify for the free medical insurance, and they'd take people to USC and dump them at USC, and they would get
right,
like in this not very nice condition hospital, they would get like what help or whatever, and then the government's paying for it. So somewhere along the way, I was like, hey, I'm not getting medical care. I don't have insurance. Thumbs up. I am worried. I'm concerned about my own health. Like, what if something serious happens? What is the plan? Like, what if I got cancer? What if this heart thing is a really big deal? What if I get
right,
injured? What if I get very sick out on the road again in some country? What if there's a car accident? Like, things that can happen. What's the plan? Like, what will happen to me? What will be done? And I was also running out of my inheritance money that
right,
I had that was paying for my medical care and food and vitamins and prescriptions and things that I needed to stay healthy. So I was like, what am I going to do? So I was going to the people I was supposed to go to, and I was writing reports, sending them to ethics and saying, this isn't okay. What's the deal? I was going to the multiple medical liaison officers and qualification staff members and saying, what would happen if this, I want to know, right? For me and for the people that work for me, that I'm now responsible for all these people, right? I want to know, like, what's the deal? What are we going to do? What happens? And they were like, oh, well, we just get a float and we just pay for it. I was like, well, what if someone's horribly ill and the stats are down that week? Well, you get less money, right? Or internationally, people don't buy as many books that week. Now there's not money to help to help you
Right.
get your
Right.
staff covered. So I said, I want to sign up for Medi-Cal. And they said, well, you're not allowed to. And I was like, well, I qualify for Medi-Cal. So I'm going to sign up for Medi-Cal, like of the free insurance, because
Right.
everything's covered. There's like there's zero copay. Everything's covered. Right. Well, no, you
Right.
can't. And I was like, and finally, like near the end, I was like, oh, well, I'm going to do this. And they're like, well, you can't because, and I was like, well, why can't we? And I was told, well, we don't want the local government they start seeing like all these people have Medi-Cal going to the same address. So imagine like 500 people with the same address all getting Medi-Cal.
Right.
And then it creates the government looking at them. It
Right.
creates
Right.
the city looking at them, the local government system, right? So they're like, we decided we're not going to. And I was like, why don't you just pay for insurance for all your staff like a company, like a regular company does? Well, no, we don't want to spend them. They probably would spend less money
Oh,
getting
for
really
sure they
good.
would.
It's so
Yeah, no, for
insane,
sure they would.
right? But I was like, I was straight up saying to people, I'm expendable. He's expendable. She's expendable. You will let him die. You will let me die if it's too
Yeah.
expensive, if it's too inconvenient. And they were like not able to be like, no, he wouldn't. They were kind of like, well, kind of like, if you're not as useful anymore, then you're not worth saving. Was kind of it's kind of like the mentality and the attitude. And I was like, this is really scary. Like I'm not going to be treated this way. We can't treat people that way. So I went and and then I got injured. I got a concussion, and I was able to heal from that because I went to see doctors because I went and got Medi-Cal. I don't have it anymore. I make too much money to qualify for it, but I was able to. I just went totally against the rules, and they couldn't stop me from doing it, because
Right.
I was this like high risk particle or whatever. So they didn't stop me. I was like, I'm going to do it. I went to like a place that helps, actually is like helps people who are like unsheltered and stuff like that. And I was like, I need help. I need insurance. I need medical care. And this like
Yeah,
really nice
they
lady
got you signed
helped me
up.
to sign up.
Well,
Yeah.
the C word. I mean, you exhibited so many red flags. I'm really surprised that they didn't just kick you out earlier. So, I mean, not that they ever kicked you out.
Well,
But I
they
mean,
can
come on,
control you.
yeah,
They
I
can
know.
control you better. That's the new standard operating procedures. We can control you better if we keep you in.
Yeah,
Right.
for
So
sure.
if you're
For sure.
if you're high risk in any degree, they'll try to keep you in. I mean, in the past it would have been like, hey, I'm super gay, and it would have been like, okay, there's the door. Okay, ciao. But now
Yeah.
it's like, okay.
Yeah, no, you mentioned the infusions, the vitamin drips and so forth, which I have, when I was starting to have problems and blah, 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 they were like, well, we need to get you some vitamin drips. And this is one of the vitamin drips are like quack science. I mean, you can Google vitamin drips and look it up, and there's like, if you're like whatever, some rich rapper, nothing against rappers, but you're like some celebrity, and it's. I was living in Malibu for a while, and the church was paying for it, and they were taking me into like some bougie drip place in like Malibu, right? And
People go for hangover cures.
yeah, I was just going to
That's
say,
a lot. They'll
you'd
go
see all these
partying and blow it out.
all
and then
these
do-
like billionaires' trophy wives coming in there, and getting these vitamin drips because they've been sold this bill of goods that it's going to make their skin look good and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It's a very unregulated practice. There's a lot of people say it's total quack science and it's a waste of money. Scientology is big time into that. And as I mentioned before, like at Gold, they have two hyperbaric chambers, oxygen chambers, that the CS and the MLO's office organizes who should go in there, maybe who's not doing well, their health is suffering. So, they have them go in. And it's the last time I saw Heber Jench, he was being wheeled into a room to get his hyperbaric chamber, treatment. They have these these magnetic sort of blankets that you lay on for magnetic treatment. They have like those red light treatment, like you put on a ball cap and it's got red lights in it, or you
Oh
have a
yeah,
pen.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they invest in all of that stuff. That stuff is really expensive. But the thing is, David Miscavige uses it wherever he is in his facilities. He's got a hyperbaric chamber that he can spend, an hour a day in. I don't know, maybe they make you taller. I don't know, maybe they make you look younger, whatever it is. So they'll get it, for all of this stuff. And again, I'm going to read it. And that the spirit alone may save or heal the body. I mean, that's what they out front believe in, but what they practice is really different. Because if that's true, then why are we lost your picture? Can I still hear you? Yeah, I can
Can you
still
still
hear
hear
you.
me?
But
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Well, you just keep talking and I'll
yeah, I
switch
will. Yeah,
the.
yeah, that's just your webcam utility went down. But yeah, so if they believe that, then why are they investing in hyperbaric chambers and magnetic therapy and red light therapy and this other thing where you like ground yourself? Like you spend a certain amount of time standing or sitting on a pad that grounds you to the earth. I mean, they do all this stuff. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine for people to do that kind of stuff and choose to do it, but the problem is that you're not given a choice.
Yeah, you're not given a choice, and the money is prioritized in such a way that uh, people that really need help don't get it, and it's really a sad. So let me see. I think I start. I'm going to go through some of these questions now. I think we've covered pretty much all of my notes. We've covered all of the stuff. Da, 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 da. Well, yeah, the one last thing I wanted to mention was in Scientology, and I know a lot of you have heard about this, and you've heard about the whole concept of PTSness, which is such potential trouble. You are considered a potential trouble source if somehow you're connected to a person who's an enemy of the church or otherwise an evil person. But there's this idea that if you can only be sick if you are connected to someone who is an enemy of Scientology, which is why, and somebody mentioned this in the chat, I'll get to that I think it was Rev Girl possibly, who mentioned that when you are sick, you go to ethics, right? I mean, yeah, you do see the MLO and they try to sort out whatever's wrong with you, but it's essentially you're sick, you need to see the ethics officer because the belief is you can only be sick if you're connected to somebody who's an enemy of Scientology. It's just so you're like committing some kind of act against your group if you're sick, whether you know it or not. You're connected to somebody who's actively working against Scientology. How's it going there on your webcam utility, Rachel?
Oh, I just have to like restart it or whatever.
Yeah, okay.
So I'll
Well,
just
I'm
be
going
a
to jump over.
black screen. But yes, you are correct. There is a stigma, a major stigma to getting sick, and it is your fault and something evil. You've done something unethical if you are
Yeah,
sick.
yeah, you're involved in
Um,
something,
and they will control your ability to drive. They will say you're not allowed to drive a car
right? Right,
until you do this handling, and we have no one to do the handling. So you could be, even your own personal car, if you happen to have one, you
right.
can't drive it. It's next. It's the control is hard to understand.
Yeah, it's difficult,
If
and
you
it's
have an
difficult to
experience.
understand how we were all so kind of willing to go along with this. It's like so. I'm going to jump over to some of these comments here because we just crossed an hour, and so
Yeah,
this is
hit us with some cues.
yeah. Here we go. So. Barbara says, question for Rachel. Will you be showing your film, referring to Under the Influencer, showing at the Durham Film Festival? I think it's usually around April in Durham, North Carolina. Well, I don't know. What's your deal with the film festival
Well,
circuit?
the producers are entering a lot of different festivals, and I don't know if that's on the list, but if it's a good one, um, I can definitely look it up and see because it's a great idea. We're open to
Yeah,
all the ideas.
I think Durham is a good one, so we should check that out.
We do not know yet which one it's going to premiere at.
Yeah,
We think we do, but I can't announce it yet.
yeah, and it's not cheap to. By the way, it's not cheap to enter film festivals. There's entry fees. You got to plan on travel and da da da. Da. It's a lot of moving parts there. Okay, Stana, how are you? Rachel, your film sounds amazing. Every effort to promote Okay, I put it on screen. Sorry, guys. Stana says, Rachel, your film sounds amazing. Every effort to promote diversity and inclusion is so vital. Yes, it is. Hey, I was thinking it's completely up to you, Rachel, but maybe we should do a stream at some point and just at least show the trailer, like just kind of promote it a little bit.
Oh yeah, I can get a trailer for it.
Yeah,
And
we
hey,
should.
I see my camera again, and you don't see me. Do I need to leave and come back in?
Yeah, why don't you do that? Why don't you just leave? Yeah,
Okay.
restart your browser.
Bye.
Bye bye. Yeah, there you go. So I'm going to carry on with these comments here. Okay, thanks. Barbara put up the full frame. Okay, good. Barbara put that up. I'll make sure that Rachel gets a chance to look at that. Yeah, this is another good point. Ms. Amber Sunshine says, evil cult DM can have a $5,000 hairstyle, but no funds for SO or staff medical insurance. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, the guys that he has doing his hair and makeup for the events, those guys are $10,000 each. Plus, he's flying over to the IAS. God knows what that costs. I'm sure Tom Cruise gives him the keys to his, tosses the keys to his jet at him, but somebody's got to pay for the fuel, and he also travels with his own personal chiropractor. But the point is, if you mention that to anybody in Scientology, they'll go, hell yeah, he deserves all that stuff because he is the one single person who's saving humanity more than anybody else. And they truly do believe that. So pointing that out to them doesn't help. I know you're not doing that, but I just want to mention that, hey, look who's back. Da,
I'm
da, da, da,
back.
look who's back.
Yay.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, I mean,
so
Mitch, like what you've been talking about is a big deal. The fact that I saw money being spent on whims and on things like, oh, David Miscavige's like, I want to be photographed. We should use a real camera. So let's buy this $40,000 phase one medium format stills camera based
right,
on him having a comment that should be used to take these photographs that
right.
are basically just sit it on a tripod and click it. Like your Nikon and the Nikons they already had were completely qualified for that. It's like a high fashion camera that you'd use to shoot the cover of Vogue. Like, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like you could buy a camera for $3,000 to $5,000 that would absolutely do the job, but now you're going to spend $40,000 plus special lenses. So you're going to spend $75,000, $85,000. And I saw that and I'm like, hey, this person over here can't get a surgery that they need, or this
yeah,
person over here can't get, they could have like some silly thing and they could need like, $300, $400. Well, when somebody's making $46 a week, they can't pay for a
right,
$400 medical
right,
treatment. So you'll spend $85,000 on that. And what goes into setting up when he goes to a space, there's messengers who are sent to set up the space and custom glassware is brought in and he
yeah,
travels with an Illy espresso machine, probably two, because there's always a backup of everything.
yeah.
With this special espresso,
I forgot about
he'll be like,
that.
get me sushi, and like people are eating food that's making them sick. Even let's say, even if I was like, okay, well, this is the most important person, whatever, such an important person on this planet, I still don't believe that means that other people shouldn't have basic standards of living, right? And
Right,
I
no,
just always
right,
was like, well, if I'm going to get medical care, I want the people on my crew to have medical care. If I'm going to eat well, I want them to eat well, right? When people were giving me shit about spending money on food, it wasn't me spending money budget on food. It was
right.
my whole crew. It was like me and the person who applied for the money spent food money on feeding the crew. Because I was like, and I was in there like, you need to feed them. Like
Yeah,
a lot of the times I wasn't even out on those shoots. I was like, these are my juniors. They need to be fed. It's not,
yeah.
it's not healthy.
Yeah,
It's
because you,
not
you
safe,
d- you
right?
do feel responsible for the people that you are telling what to do and that they're doing it.
Yes.
It's just there's a thing where you automatically start to feel responsible if you're actually an empathetic person. If you're not, then you're gonna, without even realizing it, you're gonna be abusing them just by working them with no
And
food.
it's the empathy thing, and that's what's so hard. What gets you stuck, and what's hard to wrap your head around is like Michelle, my wife, will tell me, don't try to understand what's going on with a person who has no empathy or lacks
Yeah.
empathy or is a sociopath or a narcissist. It like actually like clinically like type of a situation, because they don't think the way that you think. They're gonna do.
Right.
You're like, how could? There's no way he could actually do that. There's no way
Yeah.
he could actually just not care. She said, don't try to
No.
understand because you won't understand it.
Yeah.
She said the other thing that's tricky about these types of personalities is they can mimic caring. They can mimic love. They can mimic affection. They
Yeah.
can mimic these, but it's mimicking. It's not genuine.
Yeah. I think they call that
It's
cognitive
wild.
empathy, right? I think that's what is referred to as cognitive
Possibly.
empathy. Yeah, it's because it's the looking at a situation saying, "Oh, I'm at a funeral, people are crying, therefore I need to cry." Like they use their cognitive abilities to calculate what emotion they should be feeling, which is not how
But they're not
emotion
actually
works.
feeling it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
so
I
they
don't think
don't
that's how it works.
feel bad. Like he does not feel. You've got DM sitting there. He does not feel bad that his staff are not being, that
No.
people serving him are not getting medical care, are not being fed well,
Yeah.
that people are experiencing trauma after trauma. He does
Yeah.
not feel bad. Don't try to be like reason it with it, because it won't ever make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you've ever had a personal close relationship with somebody like that, which I unfortunately have, you really begin to understand it on an experiential level. But the thing that you really understand is what Rachel is saying. You'll never be able to say, well, what were they thinking? You'll never be able to figure that out.
You'll drive yourself crazy trying to figure it out,
Yeah.
and it can
Yeah.
make you get stuck in the. Well, it couldn't be that, and that's why I was saying, well, he must. All these people say he's so great and he's responsible for helping them and all this stuff. Like he must be a good person. Like he wouldn't do that, because how could you do something like that? It must be that so and so was really doing something that bad for him to be that upset.
Right. Right.
Mm-mm. No,
No. Yeah.
but
No, they're doing. Yeah.
it takes a while to see through that.
Yeah.
The control is intense, and you have to. It's hard. You can't understand it unless you look at it from an outside point of view, as you're looking at someone in an abusive relationship.
Right.
Like you were in
Exactly.
an abusive relationship.
Yeah, exactly. That unfortunately, one of the great ways to gain understanding into how cults work is to have experience in any abusive relationship, which you now have left, and but you know that it was abusive. Here's a question. I'm just going to throw this up. This is from Pocono Plock. This question: do you think you have ongoing health issues as a result of the medical negligence of Scientology? Real question, not an ambulance chaser. Oh, so he's an attorney who's looking for work. Yeah, not okay. I got it.
Yeah.
Rachel, what do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe I'm
Yeah,
still dealing with a multitude of things, and I believe everyone does. And I think you look at Rosemary and her
yeah,
story. She definitely has issues that were caused because of things there. Yes, absolutely and definitely. And I'd be more than happy for an ambulance chaser to come over, but it's just they have things rigged so that you are coerced and forced,
yeah.
whether you wanted to or not, to sign a arbitration clause to be allowed to work, to be allowed to do your job, to be allowed to
Right,
go to
right,
get your lunch or your dinner or whatever it
right,
was. So they have until there's some higher level court ruling um, that doesn't stand. There's nothing legally that can be done, and until we change the laws in this country that say that religious organizations do not have the right to violate your rights.
right, right. Yeah, right. It's just it's similar to the problem you have when somebody in an abusive relationship who's actually being calls the police and says, "I'm really worried." they're not going to, they rarely ever come. I mean, sometimes they'll come. It's like a domestic disturbance, whatever it is. There's not a lot they can do until somebody draws blood, until there's an actual physical altercation. And it's really a shame that they're not able to, they're like, go see a lawyer and then, get an injunction and blah, blah, blah. And oftentimes people die before that ever happens because we don't have a good vocabulary or a good understanding of these levels of abuse that truly are dangerous before they actually result in, physical damage to somebody. But yeah, I just wanted to put this comment up. Leslie Bishop said, it's like trying to teach a blind person what colors are. DM is just incapable of having compassion for anyone other than himself. Yeah, it's totally true.
Yes.
And sometimes they'll do a great job of faking it,
they can be very convincing and very charismatic.
Yeah.
Very likable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Magnetic. Barbara says, I was in an abusive relationship for 1 year, and it is the only way I feel as if I have any true understanding of what cult members endure. It was a cult of two, I guess. You don't guess. You're 100% right, Barbara. The only difference between a cult of two and a cult of 25,000 is just a matter of scale. One is it's just a bigger thing. It's always based on one thing, which is power differential, where you have one person who either has real power or imagined power or power that they've taken and they're using it over other people. I have yet to think of an abusive situation that doesn't involve a differential of power between one person and another, or one person and many people. So it's kind of something always to look for when somebody is claiming to be a victim, but they're the one that had the power in the situation. They're probably the abuser, because it's another thing that these narcissistic, sociopathic people love to do, which is to claim that they're the victims of a situation when they never are. Okay, let's jump back to these.
Which DM does do all the time.
All the time. Why am I the one who has to do everything, right? How many times?
Everything. And I don't get to go to sleep because I have to do this.
Now I got to stay up all night.
You guys effed it up, so now I don't get to sleep and I have to. And it's like, wait, what?
Yeah, and it's so hard to fathom that they really believe that. You think that they're just making it up, but they really believe it in their minds.
No, Mitch, like one time at Flag, he came to me and we were there for an event of some sort. And he came to me and he said, what did you get for dinner? And I was like, oh, we had it was like a turkey something, whatever. He's like, they made me a sandwich. Can you believe it? These guys are eating like Thanksgiving dinner and I get a sandwich.
Yeah, that's so funny.
And he was complaining about his food.
Yeah, that guy could have had Thanksgiving. Yeah, he probably had Thanksgiving dinner flown in from a 5-star restaurant in Paris, and he's telling you.
And I'm not even kidding. It was just random and out of nowhere, and I was like, "Oh, wow, oh."
So funny.
And I'm thinking I would have preferred a sandwich because the food sucked, right?
Yeah.
Can I have the rest of your sandwich?
Yes,
I'll take it. But it was probably a sandwich on, gluten-free keto bread with organic everything and organic grass-fed, meat and everything sterilized with full grain alcohol because he won't go into a space that hasn't been pre-sterilized with this.
Yeah, exactly.
He keeps a bottle of full grain alcohol that looks like drinking alcohol, like a glass bottle. And then they come in with a sprayer and they stick this sprayer and screw it onto the top and they spray every surface down with this alcohol to kill germs before he enters the space.
Yeah, but that's because of germs, right?
That's because of germs. Yeah.
He's a total germaphobe. I mean, this guy's a freaking
there's a story of what happened at PAC. That's the big blue buildings that Pacific Area Command a number of years ago, probably 8 or 10 years ago or something. They ordered a bunch of dishes from China, super cheap dishes, like plates. And they were all, in a hurry in the galley being, Sea Org schedule, right? So they didn't wash them. They just they got them, unpackaged them and served everyone on them. And everyone got this weird foreign
virus and got really sick. There was like a virus or a bacteria. Something was on it, and everybody got sick. Like everybody was like throwing up and all kinds of stuff. So those are the two
I hate to laugh.
ends of the spectrum.
I'm just thinking of that film. Oh, what was that film where there was the, you know how vomiting can be contagious? Like one person vomits on another person. There's a very,
yeah, it can like get that gag
it
reflex.
triggers it. It triggers it, and then everybody starts vomiting. There's just a very funny film. Actually, with Helen Mirren was in it. I can't. The butcher, the somebody that and his wife. I don't know if you ever saw it. Classic film, but there's a scene in a restaurant with all these kinds of people in tuxes and these fine women, and somebody throws up, and then somebody else throws up, and then pretty soon everybody, like 100 people in this room, are all throwing up. And I was just getting a picture of that when you were talking about the whole back dining room.
Yeah.
Having like everybody just being triggered and throwing up. So it's not funny, guys. I'm sorry to make light of that, but it's just funny. But yeah, so what happened with Dave? Dave found out about this?
Oh no, I don't know.
Well, because we were talking about what a hypochondriac. I mean, he's such a hypochondriac. It's just like
it's just
freaky.
the juxtaposition of the levels of care and attention. It's just full blown narcissism. Like he's the only one that matters, and then Tom Cruise, because they're the only big beings, and everyone else is expendable. It's like the Expendables. Yeah, everyone else is expendable at varying degrees of expendable. They're like Gaffer's tape. They're expendables.
Yeah, exactly. They came from the Expendables store. Yeah, they're like gels and gaffer tape. Yeah,
C-47s and yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. What I forgot what that is. What is that?
A clothespin.
Oh yeah, right. That's the technical term for clothespin, so they can charge $1 a piece for them or something.
Yeah. As a line item on your budget.
Yeah, exactly. Miss Amber Sunshine is asking you, Rachel, have you filed a lawsuit against this criminal organization? But
no, I have not, and I don't think it would go anywhere because that would just end up in religious arbitration.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, totally.
So I think Val Haney is fighting a good fight. She's fighting a good fight right now. She's going through this eternal arbitration, and she's fighting she has to go through it, and hopefully that will prove to a judge somewhere that it's a sham, that it's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, we certainly all support her effort. I think that once she is through the arbitration, she's going to be able to go back to a judge, and I think it's going to be different. I think they wanted that to play out.
I hope.
Yeah.
I hope so. They have no choice but to go through, but she is very brave because that is very traumatizing. Talk about re-traumatizing a victim. Yeah. I mean, hours and hours of being re-traumatized by her, the victimizers, by the perpetrators of the criminal activities. They are absolutely purposefully bringing them in there. There's no attempt to do it in a civil way. There's no attempt to be like, well, look, maybe there was something, anything, one little thing that we actually didn't handle well. Not one shred of that. And right, exactly. the lawyers that work for them and work on that, it's just a job, whatever. You are despicable creatures to put a woman through what you're putting her through.
Or anybody, disgusting. But especially a woman. So question for
anybody, but obviously I have a
well, women are more vulnerable. It's a fact. No, it's like you don't even have to justify it. The thing is that
I don't know. I mean, there's definitely plenty of evil women who have been at the high end of the power imbalance, the top end of the power imbalance too, right? But
I can name. Yeah, exactly. I can name a few. So Barbara wants to know from both of us, do we ever at any time feel that MLOs, etc., had any empathy for you when you were suffering? I would say yes. I would absolutely say yes. I would say that these are trapped people. They're not the ones I've dealt with are absolutely brainwashed and indoctrinated. They think they're doing the right thing, which is that's one of the dangers of Scientology, especially the Sea Org, that you get people doing things really against their and other people's better judgment, and they truly believe that they're true. They're correct things to do. I don't think these were sick sociopathic people.
No, they were not. I had an MLO pay out of pocket for something and not tell me because I was always I was pleading my case. I need this. I need this. She paid for it.
Wow.
And was like, okay, this is appropriate. It's going to get it approved. And so she got reimbursed for it and then got in a lot of trouble for having approved this treatment and had to pay it back personally, several $100s, which was she probably had to pay a month or two's wages back. And then I found out about that and I was like, hey, that's not right. Let me pay you back, or at least let me go half. And she was like, no, I made the choice. You needed the treatment.
Yeah.
It was my fault that I didn't have myself organized and my ducks in a row. And I didn't, fight hard enough to get my, the right amount of money approved for that week. A lot of them are taking it all on themselves, and they do illegal things and they violate HIPAA and they do evil things and they do criminal things and they act like criminals, but they're generally speaking good people who are in that position because they do have some empathy and they do care and they want you to do well. And they're just absolutely mind controlled and tricked into thinking that that's the right thing to do. And I've seen them stay up late at night trying to figure out how to make things work. I've had them, they absolutely will turn around and blame themselves for stuff. I've seen them be frustrated and totally stressed out. And I've seen them be completely cold-hearted and act in a horrible, cold-hearted manner because they believe the philosophy that they're following.
Yeah, totally.
It's wild.
Totally. That's a good part of the reason why we're here doing this, is because there's some really good people that need to wake up and get the hell out of there. Now,
it's also why it's hard to be like, oh, this is all evil, this sucks, I'm leaving, right? Because
exactly.
I felt this responsibility to these people who are still trapped there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned that yesterday. It's like, you ask a lot of veterans what they were fighting for, and they say they were fighting for the guy next to you. So, there is that kind of camaraderie that develops. So Love Food Kitchen says, this sounds terrifying. A man drugged up to the eyeballs with guns, knives, in a very dubious mental state. After decades in the cult and a 70s mullet, sounds more of a danger than a roid-ranging COB. Yeah, I mean, in some ways, so listen, I do have to say, I'm not going to defend Danny, and I also don't want to disrespect the dead, but he did develop an extremely painful case of rheumatoid arthritis that he had for years, and in spite of, Scientology's inability to do anything about his physical state. And as a result of his arthritis, he became addicted to drugs and then became an addict, because there is a certain point, and Danny even told me this, where you're just taking the drugs to get high. You're no longer taking the drugs because, after a point, you're glad you have arthritis because it's an excuse for you to just keep pouring this shit down. But eventually they put his foot down. They put their collective feet down. And, I can't believe that I just did that. Hold on, guys.
What?
I just took myself out of my stream. There you go. I put my computer to sleep. It was crazy. But eventually they put their foot down and they got him through a Purip. That's a whole crazy story. I've written about that. But
it's not anything against. I mean, addiction is a real situation, and these drugs. I mean, the TV series Painkiller that was done by the Jigsaw Productions.
Yeah. I saw it. It was frightening. It was a really good film.
Really good people get addicted to these drugs, and they can have real serious situations with pain and whatever. It's nothing against addiction. Is a disease as well, and there's a lot of times people are self-medicating with underlying mental health conditions. That absolutely can happen with something like Scientology, because you're not actually addressing your valid mental health situation. You're doing this other stuff on top of it, which often masks it for a period of time, and then it gets way worse. So it's absolutely nothing against anyone struggling with addiction. It's the sheer hypocrisy
exactly
of Scientology. And unfortunately, I think he was in in a position where he should have observed the hypocrisy, and nothing excuses behaving the way that he behaved, and running around with guns and illegal knives, and knowing he had this,
and threatening people. It wasn't this that he carried them. He was threatening people with them.
Staff were scared of him. He was mean. He was
even
never mean
the
to
ethics
me, but
the ethics officers were afraid of Danny. It was crazy.
I mean, he was an evil person. He was being evil. He never, if he had gone and been like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? I'm going to go to like an actual valid rehab and turn things around. And I'm going to now talk about what happened and what I did. I would be like, hey, good for you. I forgive you. But he didn't. He kept pushing that. And he was very knowingly telling absolute downright lies and fabrications with those LRH biographies.
And he knew it too, because I used to joke with him about it. I mean, he once said, sorry to cut you off, but I just have, before I forget, he was doing this one about L. Ron Hubbard. When he left St. Hill, before he started the Sea Org, he went to Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. And, he had thought of himself as Cecil Rhodes, who was the person who founded Rhodesia, who, it was a little ironic because Cecil Rhodes was a gay man, but L. Ron Hubbard proclaimed that he was the reincarnation of Cecil Rhodes. Yeah. Oops. Yeah, exactly. I came back. I'm not gay anymore. I promise. But what was my point? So anyway, L. Ron Hubbard cozied up with the anti-apartheid government in Rhodesia. He wrote a constitution for them, which he believed would help them keep their blacks more in control and make everything a little bit more safer in the country. They hated the guy. They deported him. Okay. L. Ron Hubbard was deported from Rhodesia. So Dan Sherman tells the story, completely whitewashes the whole thing, and he says L. Ron Hubbard was exiled from Rhodesia. So after that event, I said, Danny, you got to be joking. He couldn't have been exiled. You can only be exiled from your own home country. He was deported. And he said, yeah, but exiled sounds better. So like, he didn't give a shit about the truth. He was just like, whatever sounds cooler is what I'm going to say. So.
Yeah. So there's a certain point where, look, if someone comes around and I believe in giving people the ability to change. And they could have done some pretty awful things if you turn around and you change and you change your tune. I respect that, and I think we need to create a world where we can give people the space to do that and the place to do that. Yeah. Too late for him.
Yeah, too late.
He was pushing evil till the last moment.
Yeah.
I know at one point in there he was a victim, and he was conned. And he was fooled. But at a certain point, he just turned into being a victimizer.
Right.
And
that's what happens when you mirror David Miscavige. I mean, it's the same thing that happened to Tom Cruise. He mirrors David Miscavige. And he mirrors that kind of very culty, abusive, and David
victimizer.
And you still need to be held accountable. And I know we both feel the same way, that change that you talk about, it starts with one simple thing. You just stop creating evil. You stop it, and then you move on from there in terms of holding yourself accountable, doing what you can to keep the evil from ever happening again. But the first thing you do is, obviously, you recognize that what you're doing is evil, but you don't proclaim it until you've stopped doing it. And that's what people need to do. I mean, at some point, I had to stop enabling the Church of Scientology. I wasn't abusive, but I enabled, and enabling is really, really bad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and Rachel was brilliant at helping to whitewash these programs and so forth. So, it's just, you have to, stop abusing, stop enabling. Look, I think we're done with we've hit an hour and a half. I keep really wanting to keep these things to an hour, and I suck at it. But so at this point, I'm going to bring this to some kind of a controlled landing. And we're going to get on with our day. And I hope that we've learned a little bit more about the abuses of the Church of Scientology. Not that we don't already know enough, but I think it's important to get these kinds of messages out, because there are people in there right now that are hurting. You have the Rosemary Browns of the world who are left there, who are still being abused, and they're nameless, and we don't even know how many there are. And you have all of these staff who need help. And I think it's important to keep raising awareness of that. And that's what we're here today doing. So I don't know, Rachel. We'll do something else soon. I mean, it depends on your schedule. Maybe I think next time we should do something a little more fun, uh, because this is such a dark subject.
This is heavy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it needs to be spoken about.
Yeah, I need to take a walk. And so does my dog. But stick around when I end the stream. We've got a couple of things to go over. And all of you guys, thank you so much for coming by. I really appreciate it. Oh, I got to do a little bit of housekeeping real quick. So listen, I'm so bad at this. I'm the worst salesman in the world. But
for more stories, read Mitch's book.
Yeah, for more stories, read my book. There's a lot of great stories in there. I was kind of surprised. I went out with Sterling yesterday, and he was like, "Oh my God, I have so much content from your book," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's why I wrote it, for content." But in a way that I did, but it's content for you guys to read as well. But you can support my journey to hold Scientology accountable by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Mitch Brisker. You can go and you can order merch from my website, Scientology. At MitchBrisker.com.
MitchBrisker.com.
What's going on with here? I'll do it for you. I know how to do this. Hold on one second. Hold on. Reactions. I've got this thing here. Yeah, I've got mine turned on now. Here we go. Come on, let's do it. Mine are turned on. Why isn't it doing it? Okay, I
can
never
do it when I want it to do it.
I know. I'm gonna do mine manually. Here we go. I'm turning mine on. MitchBrisker.com. You can go there. You can buy an autographed copy of my book for $50 plus change. Okay.
MitchBrisker.com.
Yeah. Okay.
That was your infomercial.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you for, if you subscribe and you hit the notification bell and you like this video, I really appreciate it. You can donate to me directly at my PayPal account at mitchbrisker@gmail.com. My book, Scientology, The Big Lie, How I Made an Evil Cult Look Good, is available on Amazon. It's available on Apple Books. It's available on Barnes & Noble and on Google Books. So, there's no, don't, my mic is dropping. Don't tell me you can't find it, okay? Shame on you. It's everywhere. So yeah, everybody have a great day. And we're going to go out here with, you know what?